Featured review time. For this, we all went to the theater and caught one of the new movies that came out this week. Adam went and saw Madam Web. So we went and saw the latest musical biopic, Bob Marley One Love. I was always forgetting what song what it used as the tag to it. I just kept on calling it the Bob Marley movie. I'm like, there's something else to the title. I can't remember what it is, but it's One Love. I'm going to start talking about this one. Bob Marley, One Love, directed by Reinaldo Marcus Green, who we last saw notably directing King Richard. He also did Joe Bell, randomly, that Mark Wahlberg movie from a few years ago. Uh, Here he's directing Kingsley Ben-Adir, playing the titular Bob Marley. His wife is played by Pinot Award winner Lashana Lynch. And it tells a very specific part of his story of Jamaica is in the Civil War, and he decides to put on a peace concert to try and bring the country together. And it tells the story of him deciding he's going to do that till when he actually puts on the concert and everything that happens in between. You know all that backstory because the movie starts with about 5 title cards that has to fill in all the backstory. So in my brain, I'm like, okay, you're starting your movie off by showing you can't tell a story without title cards filling in about what could have been like 10 or 15 minutes of exposition to your movie. Said you want to just jump right in and tell it. That kind of threw me off. It kind of had me not loving it really that much. And then you're like in it, and Kingsley Ben-Adir, okay, he looks a lot like Bob Marley. His performance comes off a little more like an imitation than a true embodiment of the reggae star. He sounds a little like him, but his movements feel like Bob Marley was like, he was this personality that just kind of let things loose with abandon. And that's just who he was. Everything just bubbled up through, and just he couldn't help but just be him. Kingsley Ben-Adir, he attempts it, but it comes off a little too wooden, a little too forced, a little too trying to be him instead of actually being him. So I thought he was fine, but it wasn't great. You could tell it was an actor acting. Lashana Lynch is great because she's always great in everything that she does. There's some pacing issues in this movie. Like, I mean, I was a little tired watching it, but I don't think I fell asleep. Like, one of the characters goes from like being unconscious on a hospital bed to performing on stage in the very next scene, and you get nothing about why. Instead, we have to constantly seeing this field lit on fire with no explanation. I don't know. It was trying to do some stuff. It wasn't really working for me. I like how you had Ziggy Marley coming out in the theater at the beginning of it saying I was on set the whole time, making sure this was authentic to who he was, which is great. I don't know if it necessarily told the story well. Like I said, the performance was a little weird by Kingsley Ben-Adir. And another thing, okay, I get wanting to be authentic, but for Kingsley Ben-Adir, he either needed to back off on the accent just a little bit, or they needed to subtitle him, because there were entire scenes I could not understand a word he was saying. I could understand the rest of the characters, but he went so far, which might have been Bob Marley, and that's fine. You either back off on the accent a little so you can understand, or you subtitle it. You can't just go with it. Anyways, I'm giving it 2 stars. It had some stuff there. I like how it really brought home that it was a tribute to Bob Marley in the end. It's kind of a spoiler, but they don't actually show the concert they performed by Kingsley Ben-Adir. They cut to scenes of Bob Marley actually doing it, which I thought was really cool. Why try to imitate it when you really are just talking about the real guy? So that was neat, but 2 stars. It could have been better. Let's go to Zach.
Bob Marley One Love. More like Bob Marley 1 star. At least that's what the critics are saying. I don't know. I'm shocked that no one said that yet. That would have been such a great opening line to a review. I like the movie. I think it's a good movie. Okay. I was entertained by it. I thought Kingsley Ben-Adir was tremendous in it. I mean, he captivated me in every scene. I thought the music scenes were really, really cool in it. I love Bob Marley. I thought it was a fine tribute to Bob Marley. It didn't cover all aspects of his life. It didn't do the cradle to grave thing. Whatever. The structure of the movie to me, it worked. It showed, I think, the important parts about his philosophy toward music and Rastafarianism. It showed the important points of his home life with his wife. It showed some cool concert footage, and it also showed the origins of Exodus and several of his songs that I thought were done in a captivating and interesting way. I think what's more interesting about this movie is why so many critics hate it. I mean, this movie, it's on like 40% of Rotten Tomatoes, but I really haven't even found a critic that likes it. Kind of going through a cursory overview of the reactions to this movie. What do critics not like about it? Well, number one, it seems like there's a burnout of biopics, okay? Oppenheimer's about to win 13 Oscars. There's Maestro. It felt like maybe this movie was kind of coming on the heels of too many biopics, okay? And it basically used the Bohemian Rhapsody formula to a large degree. Critics pick and choose. Okay, we love Oppenheimer, hate this movie, love Maestro, hated Bohemian Rhapsody, whatever. That's capricious. It's all fickle, right? They didn't like the February release date. Okay, well, is this movie, this is the kind of movie that would have been released for an Oscar run, but I guess they decided it wasn't good enough for some reason. They don't like that it's a short running length, but again, this is where critics are picking and choosing. They don't like the movie, but they want it to be 30 minutes long, so it would be somehow more important. That to me is ridiculous. Okay, they don't like that they couldn't understand the accents in the movie. They don't like Kingsley Ben-Adir's patois. So what? Okay, they also loved when Spielberg didn't subtitle the Spanish-speaking parts of West Side Story. I mean, again, you could understand what you needed to understand the movie. I like that there was that authenticity to the movie, and I thought for the most part you could understand what he was saying. So what? Okay, the critics don't like his wig. All I'm saying is that this is not a great movie, but it is by no means as bad as critics are saying it is. And what especially irks me about that is Bob Marley is someone who has not had a lot of cinematic treatment. There's the Kevin McDonald documentary that came out about him about 10 years ago, which I've seen parts of that are very good. But listen, okay, we're in a world where Oppenheimer is going to win Best Picture, and everyone is just going to jizz in their pants about what a great movie it is. Well, this is a movie that actually has an impact on people's lives, because I think if people were to watch this movie, especially young musicians, especially young Black kids, especially folks who have a dream in life, this movie could be really inspirational. And I think the movie has a really positive, uplifting message. And I think it paints Bob Marley in a really wonderful way. Now, some critics are saying, okay, this is the authorized biography of Bob Marley because his family's producing it and they sign off on everything. Well, I counter that with Green Book. Do we want a movie that takes extreme artistic liberties with how you portray someone's life without their consent? I think we saw what happened with Green Book. It won Best Picture, so maybe it should have done it. I don't know. But to me, the critics' disdain for this movie, I think, is obnoxious, and it reminds me of what Billy Wilder said. His first rule of screenwriting is that the audience is fickle. These critics all got in a corner and decided they didn't like it. Pinpoint what you don't like about it, but actually make it a meaningful criticism instead of the superficial bullshit you're saying about it, because it's a good movie. That is not to impugn you, Terry. I think I understand most of what you're saying. I just disagree with it. I give this movie a solid 3 stars, and I encourage people to see it because I think it's kind of getting lost in the shuffle as something that is a complete and utter disaster. And while it's by no means perfect, I think it definitely has more merits than it does detriments. So I enjoyed it for what it was worth. And I liked the 1 hour and 40 minute running length. Damn it. Let's make these movies shorter. I liked it.
And I'm not saying there wasn't stuff that was redeemable about it. I thought there was some good stuff in it. It's just I expected more from Kingsley Ben-Adir, especially after seeing how great he did as Malcolm X in One Night in Miami. I was, and seeing some of the promotional stuff, it looked like he was going to be just, and like I
God, I
said, it
disagree.
felt
I thought
more.
he was great in the movie. What more could you want from him? I mean, I thought that was kind of a great performance. Way
Like I
better
said,
than Best Actor Cillian Murphy.
it felt, like I said, it felt more like an imitation than a true embodiment of him. Todd, what do you think?
Okay, well, I mean, I don't know what Zach's talking about. It's getting lost. Like, it was a huge hit. It made $50 million, and like when I went to see it, it was like 70% full on a Wednesday night. I mean, it's not exactly the ideal Valentine's Day date night movie or anything, but it was packed. Like, I mean, this movie was a smash hit. Like, I don't think it's getting lost at all. Like, who cares what the critics say? But I agree with Terry on most of everything he said, though. His movie's really strange. Like, it does, like, it's like Jane Austen book club, starting in the middle. Like, it's like a 4 through 6 of an 8-part HBO miniseries or something like that, and it doesn't have any real context or anything to make you understand what exactly you should be watching at the beginning. But I think the casting is really good. Ben-Adir is really great. I could see how he'd be just like the next to play like the star of every black biopic within reason, like the next Chadwick Boseman type. He is really good and really convincing. And Lashana Lynch is really good too. What I like about it is that it's sort of like it's a lot like King Richard, and Zach Baylin was also a writer on this and on King Richard. You could tell that like the wife character is the one that is like really the one that is able to break down like the cocky, unknowable, untouchable lead character, even though he's kind of insufferable. He's the one that makes the main character click. And I think that's you could tell that like the partnership between Green and Baylin like was like came through in that sense. But I just don't really think we get an idea of who Bob Marley was and what he actually stood for, or because I mean there is like indecipherable dialect and stuff like that, but I don't think we get an idea of what actually makes him click, and because we don't have any backstory, and like the backstory we do get is kind of insufficient. It's a really strange movie, and the music is really good. That can only go so far. But I mean, there's just like random scenes that pop in and take the place of things that are doing like actual character development. It is sort of an impersonation. I could watch him do that impersonation all day because it's really entertaining. But the movie is just so average. Then the stakes are never really established. It's just an unremarkable movie. It's in the same category I would put it as being with like Rocket Man and Respect, which is like it's fine, but it kind of plays more like Bohemian Rhapsody, but it's nowhere near as bad as like Elvis or the I Want to Dance with Somebody or anything like that. I don't know. Bob Marley's obviously an amazing person. This is not an amazing movie. I think it is perfectly average. It's a 2-star movie. I don't hate it, but I'm never going to think about this movie again, really. So it is instantly forgettable.
Okay, so I gotta say something. You mentioned the theater going experience. So I went to the theater Friday night to watch this. I think there were 4 or 5 people in the theater with me. But there at the Regal I was at, they were selling Bob Marley T-shirts, which I thought was interesting. And then I show up.
You could smell that there was a tasting or something beforehand, and I could see how that could make the experience a lot better.
And this might have been it. So I show up, and as I walk up to the counter to buy my ticket, the guys behind the concession stand counter were trying to figure out what to do, because apparently for this weekend there was an option to add some Bob Marley seasoning to your popcorn. And they were talking about it. I'm like, what? And they go, yeah, check this out. And they pulled out this like giant, like Costco size, hemp infused, like garlic butter ginger seasoning that you could get on your popcorn. Wow. And I was like, wow, that's really going for it here. Like that's what we're getting. So maybe that's why the theater smelled, is because everybody bought the Bob Marley popcorn.
It could be. I didn't go to the concession stand, so I didn't I didn't know about that. That's
But I was the only one standing there, and so they were just chatting me up like, check this out. We got this hemp infused thing that we are supposed to be putting on the popcorn now. And then they found out that they were supposed to be charging extra for it, which they didn't know. And they've been giving it out for free all day.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the real question. Is this movie is probably at least a half star higher if you watch it high, and I'm wondering if the director was high and the scenes with young Bob Marley in the middle of the fire in the field. I didn't understand that at all. But listen, I mean, you can poke holes at anything. Okay, you could poke holes at Maestro in any way. Oppenheimer. I mean, talk about indecipherable dialogue. Like it's like the Oppenheimer had twice as much. But you know what? There's too much that's good in this movie. Like it's competently shot. The music is excellent. The performances are really good. How about the scene when he actually discovers the music to Exodus and they start writing that? I mean, that was a really cool scene. That is a scene that will stick with me after having watched this movie.
That was definitely a walk hard scene.
Well, okay, but that's exactly why the critics don't like it, is they want to compare it to, you know, the same sort of formula of traditional movie biopics. And that is something that is a legitimate thing to critique, but that is, I think, outside of the realm of this movie. And again, you get caught up in this idea that, oh, we have to only look at the movie rather than the larger message of it. I don't know. Oh, by the way, there were only like 3 people in my theater too. People snuck into it. And then they left after 20 minutes. Again, I'm kind of like, boy, no one likes this movie. I don't get it.
Dude, the movie's a massive hit. Did you see the numbers? It made $50 million in 5 days.
Well,
like that's
huge. What's also interesting about it is that it's got a huge, you know, Oscar caliber production unit with, you know, Brad Pitt as a producer and Dee Gardner. And when you watch this sort of stuff, you're like, okay, this is a movie that really probably they were targeting to be released in November and December. And listen, I accept your guys' criticisms of the movie. That's the mainstream consensus of this movie. But you can't tell me that this is not a movie that could have been released in December and gotten some serious Golden Globe nominations. I mean, I'm not sure really why they pushed it back. It's not significantly better or worse than a lot of movies that get critical attention. I mean, it's right on the same level as Bohemian Rhapsody. I think it's a little better than Bohemian Rhapsody, but that got, you know, 11 nominations, right?
Well, and we've been seeing the trailer for this for a while. I think it was originally supposed to be released during award season, but maybe they saw, you know, we release it in February and make $50 million, or we release it in December and it might be Bohemian Rhapsody.
But they released it on Valentine's Day, which is the weirdest thing because it's not a Valentine's Day movie, but
it's called One Love.
Yeah, and it completely drowned Madam Web in every way. So I don't know. It's interesting. Their strategy obviously worked. It's just critics didn't like it.
Let's see, if they released it on Christmas, it could have been Bohemian Rhapsody, or it could have been I Want to Dance with Somebody. So, I mean, you've got a track record of you release those biopics during award season, and they flame out spectacularly.
And the other thing that's annoying about this movie, this is by the director of King Richard. I mean, how is this movie dramatically different than King Richard? I mean, obviously the content is different, but the approach I think is pretty similar. I think this is actually a better, more entertaining movie. But like, I mean, to me, I just don't get it. I don't get why so many critics are, I guess, indifferent to it or just feel like it could have been more when we have so many of these other examples of biopics that perform so well. And apparently the studio was in on it too. So I don't know. I guess I'm just kind of lost.
There's a million of these. I'm saying this is in the same category as Respect and Rocket Man. I think they were all treated about the same. And it's kind of the same movie. It's very similar. It's just kind of funky in how it's told.
I liked Rocket Man more. But
those movies had better critical evaluations. I mean, they had higher Rotten Tomatoes score and they had more award nominations. So what was it about this movie that was lacking? I guess I think it was the hour and 40-minute runtime. They didn't like that. That was very good.
Well, Todd and I are giving it 2 stars. Zach is giving it 3 stars. It is making a lot of money, and I think Todd and I would even say with 2 stars, it's still a good movie to see, especially if Bob Marley is someone you find interesting, or if you don't know a whole lot about him. I learned a lot about him watching the movie. Yeah, it is in theaters now. Check it out. And none of us saw Madam Web, but it sounds like we definitely picked the better of the 2 evils.